The film paints a stark picture of economic inequality and corruption as the state of the economy deteriorates and crime runs rampant. The story follows two small-time crooks, Frankie and Russell, who are at odds from the moment Russell arrives late with a dozen dog leashes in tow. Frankie takes him to Johnny Amato, aka Squirrel, a middleman looking to recruit robbers. However, Squirrel despises Russell because of his pungent smell from skipping showers and smoking weed all day. He insists that Frankie find someone else for the job, having been burned in the past. But when Frankie and Russell meet again a few days later, with Russell now holding only one dog, it's clear that he has other plans. Russell reveals that he makes a fortune snatching purebred dogs and selling them in Florida. He boldly declares that he doesn't need Squirrel's offer because he's on his way to becoming a drug kingpin. Adding to the intrigue, Russell claims to have a girlfriend eagerly waiting for him to return home for some illicit fun. Frankie is tempted by the offer of a heist, but he knows it comes with a lot of risks. Who tells him to extract as much information as possible from Squirrel, their middleman. Frankie agrees to take the job only if Russell is still interested. During the meeting with Squirrel, Frankie discovers that the target is a high-stakes poker game. He immediately realizes that such games are guarded by dangerous criminal organizations, making the heist an incredibly risky endeavor. He expresses his concerns to Squirrel, warning him that success could lead to a lifetime of looking over his shoulder, fearing for his life. However, Squirrel is confident that they won't be caught, as the culprits will be identified immediately after the heist. The flashback reveals that Marky Trapman ran the game 4 years ago, but grew too greedy and orchestrated a successful robbery of his own game. As a result, he will be the primary suspect if another heist occurs. The aftermath of the first robbery sets the stage for an intense game of cat and mouse in the criminal underworld. The mob is on high alert, and their hitman Dylan is on the prowl, determined to uncover the mastermind behind the heist. Marky, who orchestrated the robbery, undergoes brutal interrogation, but to no avail. However, his laughter-filled confession to the mob about his foolishness in robbing his own game paints a bullseye on his back, making him the prime suspect if the game is robbed again. With other criminals also plotting to hit the poker game, Squirrel is eager to execute their plan quickly. Frankie turns to Russell for help, and after meticulous planning and preparation, they arrive at the bar. Donning masks and gloves and armed to the teeth, the duo is ready to take on the challenge. Frankie and Russell executed their planned robbery with precision, sneaking into the bar through the back alley and entering unnoticed through the back door of the poker game. Once inside, they brandished their weapons and demanded that everyone put their hands on the table. While Frankie stood guard at the door to prevent anyone from escaping, Russell followed Marky, who attempted to stop them while they gathered the money. After they had gathered all the cash from the players and dealers, Frankie and Russell quickly stashed it into duffel bags and escaped through the back alley. They discarded their disguises and drove away. The following day, Jackie Cogan, a professional enforcer or hitman, arrived to meet with the driver, a mysterious man who had been hired by the mob to investigate and eliminate those responsible for the heist. Jackie had been recommended to the driver by Dylan, who was not fit enough to take on the job himself. During their conversation, Jackie and the driver discussed the previous robbery that had occurred 4 years earlier. Jackie expressed his belief that Marky was not foolish enough to rob the poker game again and suggested that someone else may have been aware of Marky's involvement in the earlier robbery and set him up to take the blame. To obtain information from Marky, the Mafia has tasked Jackie with inflicting physical harm on him, but not excessively. Jackie understands that even if Marky is not guilty, the Mafia will ensure he is not linked to the robbery before killing him, given their ruthless behavior. Later that night, 2 men, presumably hired by the Mafia, ambush Marky and forcefully take him into their car. Despite the brutal assault he receives in a deserted location, Marky maintains his composure and insists that he knows nothing about the robbery. However, the men refuse to believe him based on his earlier confession and continue to beat him severely. Marky is eventually left alone on the wet ground, his face swollen and bleeding, struggling to breathe. The next day, Russell appears nervous and jittery as he places a small package in a rented locker, keeping a lookout for any potential onlookers. Shortly after, Frankie arrives at the train station to pick up Russell, who appears to have left town after the heist. As they arrive at Russell's place, he immediately takes out a syringe and injects himself with drugs. Frankie tries to keep the conversation going, but Russell keeps nodding off, prompting Frankie to wake him up every now and then. Russell plans to move to Montreal to escape their recent criminal activity, but Frankie isn't convinced that it's necessary. After all, Marky is barely holding on after getting beaten up, and they're in the clear for the time being. Russell heard about Marky's condition from a friend while he was selling dogs in Florida, but Frankie is worried that Russell might have spilled the beans to another acquaintance who works for Dylan. Russell denies revealing anything to his friend, but Frankie knows all too well that Russell has a tendency to forget things when he's high. And it seems that Frankie's worst fears have come true when Jackie approaches the driver to report that Squirrel has hired 2 low-level criminals to rob the poker game. Jackie got wind of Russell's conversation with his friend while they were on their way to Florida. To make matters worse, Marky contacts the driver from the hospital to tell him about his extensive injuries, including broken ribs, jaw, nose, teeth, and spleen. The tension is high, and the stakes are even higher. Jackie was in a tough spot, and he knew it. He didn't want to risk the safety of the mob by letting Marky go with just a beating, but he also didn't want to handle the hit himself. After all, Marky was someone he knew personally. So, Jackie made a decision. He'd hit Marky himself, but he needed Mickey's help to finish off Squirrel, as they had a history. The driver was hesitant, and Jackie could understand why. Mickey was an expensive hitman, and not everyone was willing to pay that kind of money. But Jackie was determined to see this through, and he negotiated a deal with the driver. He'd pay $15,000 for Mickey's assistance. The next day, Jackie and Mickey met up at a local bar, and the tension was thick in the air. Jackie couldn't help but notice how rude Mickey was to the waiter, though. It was a small thing, but it bothered him nonetheless. As they caught up, Mickey shared his personal struggles, including his failed marriage and time in prison. He explained how his wife had served him with divorce papers, but he didn't blame her or her lover. He knew he was beyond redemption, and he had accepted that. Eventually, Mickey shifted the conversation to the matter at hand, and Jackie explained the plan. Jackie had made a difficult decision. He told his friend that he would handle the hit on Marky himself since Squirrel knew Jackie personally. Later that night, Jackie followed Marky in his car, his face set in a determined expression. As they stopped at a traffic light, Jackie seized the opportunity and shot Marky through the right cheek, killing him instantly. But it didn't end there. Marky's car spiraled out of control and collided with another vehicle, leaving it completely totaled and Marky's body ejected through the windshield. The following day, Jackie visited Mickey's hotel room and found him in bed with a prostitute. He noticed that Mickey was drunk and in distress as he shared the story of his failed marriage. Jackie tried to console him but reminded him of the task at hand. Mickey was hired to kill someone, not to complain about his personal life. It was clear that Mickey was in no condition to carry out the hit, and Jackie had to take control of the situation. He needed to ensure that the job was done, even if it meant doing it himself. Jackie grows increasingly agitated with Mickey's uncooperative behavior and gives him an ultimatum. If Mickey fails to complete the job within the next 5 hours, Jackie threatens to alert the authorities to his whereabouts and send him back to prison. Jackie later meets with the driver and reveals that Mickey has been in New Orleans, spending his time drinking and engaging in illicit activities with prostitutes. Jackie cites Mickey's recent divorce as the cause of his unreliability and inability to complete the hit on Squirrel. Meanwhile, Russell returns to the train station and notices a group of men watching him. Despite their presence, Russell retrieves the package from the locker and tries to leave. However, he is arrested by the police at the entrance, who read him his Miranda rights. Due to his high state, Russell fails to comprehend the situation and ends up resisting the authorities. News of Russell's arrest quickly spreads, causing Frankie to become increasingly worried about the mob coming after him and Squirrel. As the sun started to dip below the horizon, Jackie sauntered into a dimly lit watering hole and spotted Frankie nursing a drink. Without wasting any time, Jackie cornered him and demanded to know where Squirrel was headed the following night. Frankie tried to play it cool, but his trembling lips and jittery eyes betrayed his fear. Frustrated, Jackie threatened to give Dylan a buzz and find out what Frankie was hiding. Not wanting to cross Jackie, Frankie spilled the beans about Squirrel's plans to hook up with a lady friend. But Jackie had bigger plans for Frankie than just a simple confession. He needed Frankie's help in tracking down Squirrel, and that's when things really started to unravel. Frankie's nerves kicked into overdrive, and he begged off, terrified of Squirrel's wrath. But Jackie wasn't about to let him off the hook that easily. He made it clear that Frankie had no choice but to come along, or else. With the stakes this high, there was no turning back. As Frankie pulls the car to a halt in a creepy, abandoned neighborhood, he tries to persuade Jackie to back out of the job by spouting nonsense about the criminal middleman being an upstanding citizen. Despite Frankie's attempts to charm him, Jackie remained steadfast in his determination to see the job through. Suddenly, a car approaches and Frankie insists that it's not Squirrel's, but Jackie is skeptical, noticing the telltale signs of deception in Frankie's body language. Moments later, Squirrel emerges from the car with a stunning woman at his side, presumably his mistress. Jackie keeps a watchful eye as they disappear into a building, all the while holding onto the car keys, suspicious that Frankie might try to flee. With his gun at the ready, Jackie stands poised beside the passenger seat, waiting for Squirrel to make his appearance. As Squirrel walks to his car alone, Jackie takes aim and fires a shot that shatters the car window. But Squirrel doesn't move or try to defend himself, so Jackie approaches and finds him lying in a pool of his own blood. Unsatisfied with just one shot, Jackie unloads more bullets into Squirrel's lifeless body. After completing his task, he tosses the keys to Frankie, who witnesses the cold-blooded murder in shock. Frankie speeds away, unable to control his emotions despite Jackie's repeated demands to slow down. Eventually, Jackie takes over the wheel and drives them to a parking lot where he instructs Frankie to wipe down the car to remove any incriminating evidence. But once they reach their destination, Jackie turns on Frankie and shoots him in the head before getting into his own car and driving away. Jackie wasn't satisfied with just shooting Frankie, so he fired 3 more bullets into his lifeless body and made sure to wipe away any incriminating evidence from the car. Later that night, the mob took care of disposing Squirrel and Frankie's bodies by placing them in a morgue freezer. Meanwhile, Jackie met up with the driver at a bar to receive his payment for the hit. However, when he opened the envelope, he was disappointed to find only $30,000 inside. Jackie was supposed to get $15,000 for each person he killed, which means he was owed $45,000. When the driver suggested that he should take it up with Dylan, Jackie informed him that Dylan had already passed away that morning. Fueled by anger and disgust for the corrupt system, Jackie proclaimed that America is just a business and demanded that the driver pay him what he was rightfully owed.